They never saw me as successful because I lived below my means. Despite running a thriving IT consulting business, I drove a 10-year-old Honda, lived in a modest apartment, and wore simple clothes. Meanwhile, I was silently paying for my parents' mortgage, my sister's car payments, and my brother's student loans. Every family gathering became an exercise in humiliation. "When will you finally make something of yourself?" my father would ask, while drinking scotch I had paid for. "Your cousin just bought a vacation home." My mother would sigh, not realizing I was the one who had just covered their property tax bill. The breaking point came last Thanksgiving, when my brother Kevin mockingly photographed my old car for his Instagram, with the caption, "Family Charity Case." Before I tell you what happened, when I finally closed my family's open tab, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had to establish tough boundaries with entitled family members. Growing up in suburban Cincinnati, the Marshall family projected middle-class stability to our neighbors, but financial reality told a different story. Our split-level house on Maple Street housed 5 people, trapped in cycles of financial irresponsibility that stretched back generations. My father Daniel worked in sales for a manufacturing company, his income fluctuating wildly with his commission structure. My mother Patricia taught part-time at a preschool, though her earnings primarily funded her shopping habit rather than household necessities. My older brother Kevin excelled at basketball and little else, coasting through school on athletic achievements while developing expensive tastes in clothing and electronics. My younger sister Amber inherited our mother's spending habits, accumulating credit card debt before she had even graduated high school. Then there was me, Nathan, the middle child who watched anxiously as bills piled up on the kitchen counter each month. While my siblings developed social skills and popularity, I grew fascinated with computers, teaching myself programming from library books and refurbishing discarded machines from neighbors. By 15, I was earning money fixing computers for teachers and family friends. This income went straight into a secret emergency fund I kept hidden in my room, a habit formed after watching too many family financial crises. "Nathan is our little accountant," my mother would say, simultaneously acknowledging my financial awareness while diminishing it as merely cute. When I suggested basic budgeting approaches as we faced another late mortgage notice, my father would dismissively respond, "When you are paying bills, you can decide how money gets spent." College revealed the extent of our family's financial dysfunction. Kevin received a partial basketball scholarship, but required substantial additional funding. My parents took out Parent Plus loans and second mortgages to cover his expenses at a prestigious private university. When my turn came 2 years later, the well had run dry. "We just cannot afford the same for you," my father explained, showing rare financial realism. "Maybe try community college for 2 years. I secured a full scholarship to the state university through academic merit while working 30 hours weekly at the campus IT department. When Amber followed 2 years after me, the pattern repeated. New loans for her fashion merchandising degree at an expensive out-of-state school, while I continued self-funding my education. The disparities in financial support never manifested as explicit statements that my siblings were more valued. Instead, it appeared through patterns of justification. Kevin's athletics offered networking opportunities that justified investment. Amber was finding herself through creative exploration. My practical computer science degree and work ethic were simply expected, not celebrated. Despite these dynamics, I excelled academically and professionally. A summer internship at a technology company led to part-time work throughout my final 2 years of college. Upon graduation, I received multiple job offers, accepting a position at Vertex Solutions with a starting salary that exceeded what either of my parents had ever earned. The first requests for financial assistance began shortly thereafter, presented as temporary emergencies rather than symptoms of ongoing mismanagement. My father called one evening 6 months into my new job. "The mortgage company is threatening foreclosure," he admitted reluctantly. "We fell behind during Kevin's senior year expenses. It is just $8,000 to catch up, but with your mother's medical bills last year, we are tapped out. Just a loan until my commissions recover next quarter." I transferred the money that evening, viewing it as repayment for the sacrifices they had made during my childhood. When the loan was never mentioned again, I recognized it for what it was: the first withdrawal from an account that would never show deposits. Similar scenarios unfolded with increasing frequency. Kevin graduated, but struggled to find employment that matched his lifestyle expectations, accumulating credit card debt while working sporadically in sales. His student loan payments became temporarily my responsibility during his third job transition in 18 months. Amber's fashion industry entry-level position in Chicago provided insufficient income for the luxury apartment and wardrobe she considered professional necessities. Her desperate calls about potential eviction led to my setting up automatic payments for her rent and utilities. My parents' financial situation deteriorated further when my father's company restructured, reducing his territory and commission potential. Their mortgage, property taxes, utilities, and increasingly expensive health insurance premiums gradually shifted to my accounts. As my financial burdens increased, I made strategic life decisions to accommodate them. Rather than purchasing a home as many colleagues did, I rented a modest one-bedroom apartment closer to my office to save on transportation costs. I drove my reliable Honda Civic long after it made financial sense to replace it. Vacations became rare weekend trips to nearby destinations, rather than the international travel many of my peers enjoyed. Meanwhile, my professional trajectory accelerated rapidly. After 3 years at Vertex, I recognized an underserved market niche in specialized IT security consulting for healthcare providers. With careful planning and my substantial savings, I launched Marshall Digital Security at 27, securing 3 major hospital systems as initial clients. The business grew steadily with profits exceeding my projections. However, I maintained my frugal lifestyle, reinvesting in the company, and increasing my support for family members whose financial needs constantly expanded. By 30, I was covering over 60% of my parents' monthly expenses, all of Kevin's outstanding student loans, and most of Amber's living costs. Despite this substantial financial support, family gatherings increasingly featured subtle and not-so-subtle commentary about my apparent lack of success compared to cousins, family, friends, or my siblings' more affluent appearing lifestyles. "Nathan, you need to invest in better clothes for client meetings," my mother suggested during Sunday dinner, eyeing my simple button-down shirt and khakis. "First impressions matter in business. My business partners care about cybersecurity expertise, not designer labels," I replied. My father chimed in, "Successful men project success. No one trusts a consultant who looks like he cannot afford a decent suit." The irony that my unsuccessful appearance was directly related to supporting their lifestyle remained unspoken. Kevin's contributions proved particularly cutting. During his brief employment at a luxury car dealership, he regularly sent me listings for entry-level BMWs and Mercedes. "Just looking out for you, bro. You could afford at least this much with your business. Gotta fake it till you make it." This advice came 3 days after I had paid $6,000 to prevent repossession of his own leased Audi. Amber, despite her complete financial dependence, participated enthusiastically in these assessments. When I mentioned possibly taking a weekend trip to Lake Michigan, she scoffed. "That is hardly a vacation. Bradley and I are going to Cancun next month." Bradley, her equally financially irresponsible boyfriend, supposedly worked in finance, though his employment history seemed as inconsistent as his contribution to their shared expenses. My parents' suburban home became the showcase for their illusion of prosperity. Granite countertops. I had funded a finished basement renovation charged to a credit card I paid furniture purchased on sale, but still outside their actual budget. Each improvement received extended family admiration, while I received sideways glances about when I might finally settle down properly, instead of living like a college student. The cognitive dissonance reached remarkable proportions. They genuinely seemed to perceive themselves as financially successful while viewing me as somehow underperforming, despite knowing at some level that my income sustained their lifestyle. My growing resentment remained largely internalized, manifesting primarily as increased work hours and further withdrawal from family interactions. The business continued expanding now, with 15 employees and contracts across 3 states. My financial advisor regularly encouraged more aggressive investment strategies for my substantial savings, unaware that my conservative approach was necessitated by serving as my family's private banking system. The circumstances that finally disrupted this unsustainable dynamic began innocently enough at my cousin Melissa's wedding. The Fitzgerald Grand Ballroom sparkled with expensive wedding decor, crystal centerpieces, elaborate floral arrangements, and champagne flowing freely from multiple open bars. My cousin Melissa had married an orthopedic surgeon in a ceremony that screamed conspicuous consumption from every carefully curated detail. I arrived alone, having declined the invitation to bring a guest. Dating had become complicated given my financial commitments and the awkward explanations they would necessitate. My simple charcoal suit, perfectly adequate for business meetings, immediately drew critical assessment from my mother when our family assembled at designated table 3. "You could have at least purchased something new for the occasion," she whispered as we took our seats. "Those pants are practically shiny at the knees." My father adjusted his new tie, a purchase I would likely discover on next month's credit card statement. First wedding we have attended since your business supposedly took off and you show up looking like an office manager. Kevin arrived with his latest girlfriend, immediately broadcasting his status symbols. Just validated the Audi. Parking attendant was definitely impressed. The car payment for which was currently 60 days past due, according to the statement I had received yesterday. Amber and Bradley made their entrance last, her designer dress likely exceeding her monthly salary. Nathan, still rocking the same suit from Uncle Robert's funeral. She air-kissed my cheek while Bradley gave me the slightly pitying handshake reserved for less successful men. Throughout dinner, conversation repeatedly highlighted the trappings of success everyone except me had apparently achieved. My father detailed plans for a kitchen remodel. Kevin described the luxury apartment building he had recently moved into. Amber scrolled through potential European vacation destinations on her phone. The watershed moment arrived during the best man's toast when he recounted the groom's humble beginnings working throughout medical school. Mark lived on ramen and drove that terrible old Toyota until residency. The best man laughed. Now look at him. Proof that short-term sacrifice leads to long-term success. My father leaned over, voice pitched, just loud enough for our table to hear. See, Nathan, some people actually leverage their education into real success. How long are you going to keep playing small with your little computer business? Something fundamental shifted in that moment. The accumulated weight of financial extraction paired with constant diminishment crystallized into perfect clarity. I excused myself from the table and stepped outside, the evening air cool against my face, as I made a decision that had been years in the making. The following morning, I called my financial advisor and attorney to initiate changes that would permanently alter my family's reality. For the next week, I systematically closed the accounts I had been maintaining on their behalf, removed automatic payments, and canceled the supplemental credit cards they had been using. For each family member, I prepared identical letters outlining the exact amount of financial support I had provided over the previous 5 years, with detailed spreadsheets documenting every payment, loan, and gift. The totals were staggering when presented comprehensively. Over $200,000 to my parents, $86,000 for Kevin's various expenses, and $74,000 supporting Amber. This letter serves as formal notification that all financial assistance will permanently cease effective immediately, each document concluded. Any outstanding balances on accounts I previously managed are now your sole responsibility. This decision is non-negotiable and final. I delivered these documents via certified mail rather than in person, recognizing the likelihood of manipulative emotional appeals if I presented them directly. Then, I waited for the inevitable storm. The first indication that my letters had been received came through an explosion of text messages and missed calls, beginning with my mother's panic about the mortgage payment that had not processed automatically as expected. My father's voicemails escalated from confusion to anger to forced reconciliation attempts within hours. Kevin's approach proved most direct, appearing unannounced at my office, attempting to leverage our familial relationship in front of my employees. Just need to speak with my brother about an urgent family matter, he told my receptionist with practiced charm. I instructed her to inform him I was unavailable and would remain so indefinitely. Amber's strategy involved flying directly to victim status, with tearful messages about potential eviction and how I was destroying her professional credibility by forcing her to consider less prestigious living arrangements. Bradley apparently disappeared from the relationship within days of my financial extraction, his commitment extending only as far as her apparent prosperity. The most dramatic confrontation occurred 3 weeks after the financial separation, when all 4 family members coordinated an ambush at my apartment on Sunday morning. I observed them through the security camera, standing in the hallway with expressions ranging from anger to desperate supplication. Rather than engaging directly, I sent a group text. I understand you are currently at my building. I will not be opening the door. Any communication must occur in writing through my attorney, whose contact information was included in your letters. Please respect my boundaries and leave. They remained for nearly 2 hours, alternating between aggressive, knocking, pleading requests to talk, and eventually angry accusations shouted through the door. My neighbors undoubtedly received quite an education about our family dynamics before they finally departed. In the following weeks, individual approaches evolved as the reality of their situations became unavoidable. My father attempted appealing to my business sense, proposing a structured repayment plan for continued support that included detailed budgets, showing entirely unrealistic expense reductions. My mother leveraged health concerns, sending medical paperwork highlighting conditions that required medications they could no longer afford. This strategy proved particularly difficult to resist, and I eventually established a separate pharmacy account that would cover only verified prescriptions, explicitly excluding all other expenses. Kevin's response proved most volatile, swinging between threats to expose my apparent abandonment of family on social media and desperate financial scheme proposals that would supposedly benefit us both. When these approaches failed, he reluctantly accepted a position well below his perceived professional level, suddenly discovering the actual value of his resume without family subsidy. Amber's adaptation showed surprising resilience. After the initial crisis and Bradley's departure, she secured a roommate, found a second part-time job, and grudgingly adjusted her lifestyle to match actual resources, rather than imagined entitlements. Of all family members, her communications evolved most quickly from accusations to reluctant recognition of unsustainable prior arrangements. Throughout this period, I maintained absolute consistency in my position. Financial assistance had permanently ended. Future relationships would depend entirely on respect for boundaries and acknowledgement of past dynamics. My attorney fielded initial communications, providing the emotional distance necessary to withstand manipulation attempts. The practical consequences for each family member manifested according to their willingness to accept financial reality. My parents downsized from their suburban home to a condominium, a transition they framed to extended family as simplifying for retirement, rather than acknowledging its necessity. My father secured additional work consulting for his former employer, while my mother increased her teaching hours. Kevin's luxury apartment and vehicle quickly disappeared, replaced by a shared housing arrangement and public transportation. His social media presence, once showcasing an affluent lifestyle, went conspicuously quiet during this transition period. Amber adapted most successfully her prior spending, apparently more habitual than deeply ingrained. Within 6 months, she had established a sustainable budget, building modest savings while advancing professionally through demonstrated work ethic rather than appearance management. For myself, the financial liberation proved immediately transformative. Without supporting multiple households, my already successful business generated substantial personal wealth. I purchased my first home. Not an ostentatious display, but a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a pleasant neighborhood. I replaced my aging Honda with a new hybrid model selected for efficiency rather than status. Most significantly, I established a foundation funding technology, education for low-income students, creating meaningful impact aligned with my values. As the 1-year anniversary of financial separation approached, tentative communication pathways reopened, albeit with fundamentally altered dynamics. The first meaningful conversation with my parents occurred at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant midway between our respective homes. My father had reached out through conventional channels rather than through my attorney, indicating acceptance of new relationship terms. "We thought perhaps it is time to talk," he suggested in his message. No financial discussions, just family catching up. They appeared notably different after a year of financial self-sufficiency. My father thinner, my mother's clothing simpler though carefully maintained. They had aged visibly, stress etching new lines around their eyes. "You look well," my mother offered as we were seated. "The house must be keeping you busy." "It has been a positive change," I acknowledged. "How is the condominium working out?" "Smaller than we were used to," my father admitted. "But the reduced maintenance has been beneficial as we get older." The conversation progressed cautiously, navigating around the substantial elephant occupying the room alongside us. Finally, after appetizers had been cleared, my father addressed the fundamental issue. "We have had considerable time to reflect on our relationship with you, Nathan. Your letters were illuminating." "And painful," my mother added quietly. "Seeing everything listed that way." "It was never our intention to take advantage," my father continued. "Each request seemed reasonable in isolation. The pattern only became clear when you presented it comprehensively. I enabled the pattern as much as you established it," I acknowledged. "That responsibility is partly mine." My mother reached tentatively for my hand. "We have been taking a financial management course at the community center. Learning budgeting skills we should have mastered decades ago. Your brother and sister mentioned you have been helping them develop budgets as well," my father noted. "Basic financial education only. No direct financial support," I clarified. "That distinction has become very clear," he nodded. "Perhaps embarrassingly so." The conversation shifted toward potential future relationship parameters. Holiday gatherings, communication expectations, explicit boundaries regarding financial discussions. For the first time in my adult life, the interaction occurred between equals rather than supplicant and benefactors, despite the role reversal that had actually been operating. Kevin's reintegration proved more complicated. His initial approach came through a professional channel. He had secured an entry-level position at a company that used my firm's security services and recognized my name on their vendor list. Not asking for special treatment, his email specified. Just thought it might be time to reconnect on a personal level. Our meeting at a coffee shop near his workplace revealed substantial changes. His designer clothes had been replaced with standard business casual attire. The expensive watch and other status symbols had disappeared. Most notably, his demeanor lacked the performative confidence that had previously defined his interactions. This year has been educational, he acknowledged after initial awkward pleasantries. Turns out potential was never actually my problem. Willingness to start at the bottom was. How was the new position working out? I asked. Humbling. I answer to a manager 4 years younger than me. But the structure helps, and there is actual advancement potential if I put in consistent effort. He rotated his coffee cup nervously. My credit score is almost back in the acceptable range. That represents significant progress. I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. Kevin met my eyes directly. I mocked your choices while depending on the results of those choices. That was contemptible behavior. The conversation continued with surprising vulnerability from the brother who had once performed superiority while secretly relying on my support. No requests for financial assistance emerged, not even subtle hints about temporary difficulties. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about budgeting approaches and career development strategies. I keep the spreadsheet from your letter on my phone, he admitted. When I am tempted toward unnecessary expenses, I look at the total. $86,000 of support while I criticized your car and clothes. It is an effective reminder about priorities. Amber's evolution proved most remarkable. Our reconnection occurred at her initiative with an invitation to coffee near her workplace. Now a single full-time position at a smaller boutique, rather than the prestigious but underpaying position she had previously clung to. I almost thanked you the day after receiving your letter, she confessed, stirring her latte. Once the panic subsided, I recognized the gift of forced self-sufficiency, but pride got in the way of expressing that. Her apartment was now shared with 2 roommates, in a less fashionable neighborhood. Her wardrobe consisted of carefully selected versatile pieces rather than constant trend-following. Most significantly, she had enrolled in evening business courses, developing skills to complement her fashion industry knowledge. Bradley disappeared approximately 12 hours after I explained I could no longer afford our lifestyle. She noted with remarkable lack of bitterness. Best financial decision that was ever made for me. Of all family members, Amber most directly acknowledged the reality our parents still partially avoided. We treated you like an underachiever, while literally subsisting on your achievement. The cognitive dissonance was remarkable. Our family system gradually reconstructed itself around new foundations of financial independence and mutual respect. Holiday gatherings resumed, though, with potluck contributions replacing elaborate meals at my parents' home. Conversations about finances occurred with transparent acknowledgement of reality, rather than status performance. My own relationship with money transformed as well. Without the constant extraction of resources, I found myself surprisingly uncomfortable with accumulation. This led to expanded philanthropic efforts, focusing particularly on financial literacy programs in underserved communities. The Foundation's scholarship recipients received not only educational funding, but practical financial management training that had been so conspicuously absent in my own family. 2 years after the financial separation, I invited my entire family to dinner at my home, a gathering that would have been unimaginable in the aftermath of my initial boundary setting. They arrived bearing appropriate hostess gifts, rather than invisible invoices for support. As we sat around my dining table, the conversation flowed with remarkable authenticity. My father discussed the challenges and rewards of continuing to work past traditional retirement age. My mother shared her expanded teaching responsibilities with genuine pride rather than martyrdom. Kevin described a recent promotion earned through consistent performance rather than charm. Amber outlined her business course progress and plans for eventually opening her own small boutique. No one commented on my house, my furnishings, or my apparent prosperity with either envy or expectation. We had finally achieved the family dynamic that most people would consider normal. Adults with separate financial lives gathered by choice rather than obligation or extraction. The most profound change emerged in how they spoke about me to others. At a recent extended family gathering, I had been unable to attend my cousin, later reported that my father had spoken about my business with genuine pride, describing specific achievements without reference to visible trappings of success. My mother had shared details about the Foundation Scholarship Program rather than commenting on my personal consumption choices. This transformation from mockery to respect occurred not because my circumstances had changed, I had been successfully running my business throughout their previous dismissal, but because their perception had finally aligned with reality, once financial extraction no longer colored their assessment. The journey from financial enabling to appropriate boundaries represented the most difficult and ultimately rewarding process of my adult life. The temporary pain of confrontation and separation yielded permanent improvements in relationship authenticity. The financial resources previously directed toward enabling dysfunction now create educational opportunities and genuine security. Most importantly, the experience revealed how intergenerational patterns of financial irresponsibility and enabling perpetuate themselves until someone finds the courage to break the cycle. In our family's case, that intervention required complete, if temporary, separation before healthier connections could form. Have you ever had to establish difficult financial boundaries with family members? How did you balance compassion with necessary limits? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about establishing healthy boundaries. Consider sharing this video with someone struggling with similar family dynamics. Sometimes knowing others have navigated these challenging waters makes the journey less isolating. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for those you care about is to stop enabling patterns that ultimately harm everyone involved.